Hello, beautiful people. How are all of you doing today? What's this about Shilonen being a marsupilami? What are you talking about in chat? What's going on? What's going on here? What kind of yapping is that? Anyways, chat, how are you all doing today? Hello! Chat! So, chat, first thing I want to talk about today is I rewatched Freerun. I actually just finished rewatching Freerun. I told you guys that I needed to rewatch it. If I wanted to potentially give it a 9, I needed to rewatch it and reevaluate. And I've been running out of things to watch, so I figured, you know what, I'll do that now. And I am happy to report that I am officially changing my rating to a 9. Gladly and happily. But yeah, so I did that last night and this morning. What show? Freerun. Watch it again and make it a 10? That's not how that works. Honestly, I think the first time I watched it, I thought that like the first half was an 8 and the second half was a 9. Now that I've rewatched it, I think the first half is a 10 and the second half is an 8. Overrated show? I definitely don't think it is Boob Grinder. The exam part is overrated. I think the exam part is like... It feels... Wait, why isn't this... My fan is turned off. Okay. It feels generic. Kind of. I don't know. I guess I just don't really like the combat aspect of free. It's not that I don't like it. It's that it's not outstanding. Like, I don't know. There's just... The exam part had amazing show of power, but felt way too long for what it is. Beginning was way more epic and showed us a lot of cool world building. I mean, I kind of agree with that. I do think that the exam part is a good way to, like, build onto the magic system and explain it. But it felt like on a rewatch, it felt disappointing emotionally compared to the start of it. The first few episodes made me cry like pretty much once per episode. But then, yeah, I don't know. The second half, I didn't cry once. So yeah, kind of, yeah, yeah. Anyways, um, I am surprised that it's still at a 9.3. I would have thought that uh the FMA purists would have review bombed it already. You know, I actually wonder how high the scores of like the top 100 would be if FMA purists didn't exist. Why? Because so many times, a show has gotten incredible early reviews, so and ended up at rank 1, and people that wanted FMA to be rank 1 just gave it a fucking 1 out of 10 and review bombed it. FMA bombed fruit baskets when it got rank 1 a few years ago. I was so mad. Okay, I will say, I'm not one to endorse review bombing. But Fruits Basket definitely deserved the review. If Fruits Basket being at number 1 would be an actual insult to human intelligence in the world. I think that's like no. Chat, you know what my next project should be? I should watch every single show, or watch or rewatch if it's been too long. Every single show in the top 100 and rank all of them. Oh, that means I get to rewatch Kingdom. Wait, I'm actually so down. I kind of liked Kingdom when I watched it, but there weren't too many seasons out at that point. I think it was either 2 or 3 seasons. Wait, I'm actually really down to rewatch Kingdom. You'll have it done by next week? No, because there's a lot of Gintama. there's too much Gintama in the top 100. I don't think it'll be done by next week. Oh, that would mean. Wait, no, I don't have to because I've already ranked. Okay, yeah, we're fine. Oh, that means I get to rewatch Monster as well. Honestly, I'm actually kind of down to rewatch Monster. First 2 seasons are really bad adaptation. Yeah, maybe. We'll see. Oh, I don't want to watch fucking. I don't want to watch this garbage. Oh no. 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 Oh, I haven't dropped this anymore. I actually ended up completing it. Completed. 6. Hmm. Oh yeah. And then I also need to rewatch this. I rewatched Haikyuu relatively recently, so I probably don't need to rewatch it. I would have to rewatch Attack on Titan though if I want to rank each season individually. Ugh. Okay. Honestly, that sounds like a fun medium term project for the next for the rest of the year maybe. Anyways, that was the first thing I wanted to talk about was Freerun. Second thing I want to talk about today is I also watched Undead Unluck. It's I don't know why it's my brain doesn't want to pronounce this word properly. Undead Unluck. Um, it wasn't as bad as you guys led me to believe. Andy's not that bad. Like he's not really a pervert. He's just crude, you know. So it's not that bad. Buffs, true. That's what my mom says. What are you talking about? What do you mean? What the what? What do you mean alarm croc? Anyways, I was actually surprised by how much it picks up in the later half. Um, but I felt like the start of it was very much just average, you know, a relatively interesting premise shonen stuff with a unique power system. But the second half was actually good. Can you watch it starting in the middle? No, I don't think so. But like, unironically, I was surprised by how good the second half was. Um, I'm hesitating between a 7 and an 8. First half is like a 6. Second half is an 8, bordering on 9. I think I'll give it a 7. But the thing that makes the thing that really sets it apart from a lot of other shonen stuff to me is how well they build upon their like escalating stakes. it feels like it's a show that was written with a clear vision for where things are going. I don't know how to explain that, like, in that much detail without going into spoiler territory. But it feels as though... It feels as though the author had an end goal in mind. It feels as though the story was written from the end to the start instead of from the start to the end. I don't know how else to describe it. Wait, is the batch tomorrow? Oh, I didn't know.
You still have a special
Yo, that's
place
sick.
in my heart.
Wait, that means I can sleep as much as I want and oh wait, that's sick. But yeah, we can do banner review today. Either that or Kachina. I guess I don't need to do a Kachina pre-release. I can just talk about Kachina as I would in a short pre-release in a banner review video. Why not? Still 34 hours? Something like that, yeah. But that's tomorrow for me. It's... Anyways, chat, I need to figure out what I'm gonna watch after stream today. I sent you like 12 recommendations on Discord, did you? Are you sure? I don't see it in my message history. Maybe you got... Wait, let me look through spam. No, it doesn't look like you're in spam either. Are you sure? Are you sure you did? Wait, you did? Wait. Why isn't it showing up? What the hell? That's so weird. I can find it if I look it up, but it's not showing in my message history. What the fuck? Wait, does that mean there's people I've donawalled that I don't know I've donawalled? Kind of funny. Let me DM you balls so that it shows up in my message history. There you go. Hog. Alright, I might take a look at that. But yeah, the plan for today is I probably want to watch Kaguya-sama. Hog. I don't think so. Or if I have, it was a very long time ago, but I'm not sure. But yeah, I haven't watched season 3 of Kaguya-sama, so I'm gonna probably rewatch seasons 1 and 2 and then watch season 3 today. That's probably the plan. But then what? Maybe Grand Blue and Butchie? I think Kaguya-sama is enough for things that require my brain to be active. Then I'll watch some isekai garbage. That's probably it. What could I rewatch? I also rewatched Skeleton Knight thing. Oh, I don't know the whole name. Skeleton Knight in Another World. I rewatched that. The one in armor with the elf girl? Yeah, well, that doesn't actually narrow it down as much as you think it does. But yes, that's I believe we have the same one in mind. Yes. Watch The Count of Monte Cristo. Never heard of that one before. What's it about? I watched An Ordinary Guy Who Reincarnated into a Total Fantasy Knockout episode 1 yesterday, and it was very entertaining. Thank you for the recommendation. Yeah, I got you. It is indeed a banger. Wait, actually, you know what? I think I've finally realized why the score on my anime list is so low for it. It's because it's not transphobic. No, but like, for real. The very premise of the show is a guy gets reincarnated as a girl. Gender identity is gonna be approached one way or another, right? But they do it in a way that's respectful to trans people. That's probably why. Wait, I don't think I've ever had a ley line that has 5 bubble thingies. I've had the ley line that has 4, but I think it's the first time I've had the one with 5. I guess it's because it's a Mora ley line, and I usually do book ley lines. Interesting. I miss which show are we talking about? Life with an Ordinary Guy Who Reincarnated as a Total Fantasy Knockout. You can probably find it easily by just looking up Fantasy Knockout. Watch Heavenly Delusion. I've heard good things about it, but I don't know if I'm interested. Wait, is that the blonde girl who's a guy? Yeah, it is. Really good animation. Unironically, I agree. I thought the animation for that show was actually kind of a fucking banger. It wasn't, like, I don't think any of the animation was particularly impressive, but it was so... I just realized. It was so expressive. I just realized im and expressive, like, they're not opposites, but whatever. You know what I mean. The animation is so expressive. Like it anyways. Anyways. Any gays? No, what are you yapping about? What the heck? No. It's really hitting me that I barely go in Abyss anymore. Are you willing to watch BL? That boys love? I'm not opposed to watching romance between guys, but generally, in my experience, things that I've watched that are, like, considered boys love or girls love tends to be a little shallow. I watched Yuri on Ice when it came out and I liked it a decent amount. If you've got something that's, like, actually good and it's boys love, I'm not opposed to watching it. Be careful, people might say you're homophobic on Twitter. Unironically, you would be surprised at how easy it is to avoid homophobia allegations when you're just respectful about the way you word things. Almost seems like a landmine for content creators. The reality is that most people just aren't respectful. Either because they don't want to be or they don't know how to be. But the reason why you feel that way, like the original person that said, like, be careful, you're gonna get called homophobic on Twitter, is because people that actually are homophobic and get called out for it complain about it and pretend that they're not homophobic, and that leads you to believe, oh, you can get called homophobic just for saying normal things. No. I mean, sure, there's always gonna be random ass losers that call you things that are false if you're popular enough and you have a big enough platform. But, like, it's not an overwhelming consensus. It's not a conspiracy. It's just one or two losers on Twitter. Realistically, it's like 10 or 20 losers that are all friends with each other and that live in an echo chamber. But if you don't pay attention to them and you express yourself in ways where people that are not in that echo chamber will understand what you mean, who cares? Right? Like, people that tend to be, like, too prickly about... I don't know how to explain this best, but... people that I would consider to be, like, too sensitive in terms of issues like that, their sensitivity comes from a desire to be accepted and a desire for other people to see them as human. And because of that, when echo chambers form with people like that, they're usually very easy to break out of when you just realize, like, oh wait, no, like, this specific thing is, like, very clearly just some yapping, right? When echo chambers form around, like, right-wing grifters, it's a lot harder to break out of that because the ideology that brings them together is not one of inclusion. They're explicitly against accepting people. They're explicitly trying to cause harm. You know what you're getting into, which means that those echo chambers tend to be a lot more tight-knit and like resistant to reason. Yeah, all of this to say, the sort of people that will call you homophobic for doing something innocuous aren't evil, they're just a little dumb. Which means that you can reason with them. The sort of people that will call you a pedophile for being gay are evil. You cannot reason with them. Right? Anyways. Getting back to what my main point was. Because of all of that, it's very easy, actually, to not be considered at large to be homophobic as long as you're you know, reasonable and understanding. And to like build on to that, the type of people that will call you homophobic for not enjoying boys love is very often not really interested in what you actually think about gay people. Is being gay a normal thing? Normal is a very difficult word to describe. Is it normal to have blonde hair? I think it's very reasonable to make the argument that it's not particularly normal to have blonde hair if you live in like certain regions of East Asia, right? I think that would be a reasonable thing to say. It's something that's unusual, right? Does that mean that you should be treated differently because of it? No. The word normal often carries certain connotations that imply that if you don't fit in that definition of normal, there is something that's wrong. And if you're asking me from that point of view, then being gay is completely normal. If you're asking, like, in terms of, like, statistically, is being gay as popular? Not popular. Are there as many people that are gay as people that are straight? Probably not. But I think the main thing is that the question of is being gay normal is just not a question that matters. Like, what does the answer to that? In what way does the answer to is being gay normal change the way you think about things or the way you act with others? I think that's the question you should be asking yourself. If you are asking, is being gay normal? In what way would you change your behavior or thought if being gay was or wasn't normal? Ask yourself that and ask yourself why. It's not common, but it's natural. Natural is another word that is very difficult to properly define, and that also carries heavy connotations, just like normal. People very often tend to believe that something being natural means that it's good. If you've taken any sort of like debate or logic related classes, popular sophisms is one of the first few things you learn about in those classes, and the appeal to nature is one of the most common sophisms that are used in logical fallacies. Something being natural has, or it is not an argument for or against it being good or bad. If you want to get further into it, you need to start asking yourself, like, from a philosophical standpoint, what is natural? And I think when it comes to that, you get a lot into more religious territory. God created humans to have humans with free will and the ability to sin. So is sinning not natural? And the answer to that, if you believe in God, is honestly gonna depend on what you think. There's no real answer to it either way. You watched the latest CGS video? No, I haven't. In my opinion, I don't agree with it, but I never once treated an LGBTQ less person like less than another person. But like, what do you mean by I don't agree with it? What do you not agree with? Do you think they are wrong that they're gay? Do you think they're not actually gay and they're lying to themselves? Is that what you disagree with? Because if you say I don't agree, there's something you disagree with. Like, what is the point of disagreement? Because a lot of people say I don't agree with it, but I don't treat them any differently. But I think you're missing the point. There's nothing for you to agree or disagree with. I wouldn't walk up to you and say, I disagree that you have black hair. Like, what the fuck are you yapping about? Like, I do believe they have these, but you said I don't agree with it. I'm not asking you to fucking yap. I'm asking you, what is it? What do you not agree with? My take is I don't understand it, and I probably never will. I think being able to admit to yourself, I don't understand it, and I probably never will, takes a lot of courage. And it's something that should be commended. Understanding that you just aren't really able to understand something because you can't relate to it is good. Like, some things you can't understand unless you experience something similar, and you can't experience something similar. Question is, what do you do about that? What do you do about your lack of understanding? Do you use it as an excuse to discriminate? Or do you accept the difference and move forward? I believe that being gay is not a genetic thing and it's a sin and bad thing, so it's better to just stop it, but I won't force what I believe. Does that make me homophobic? The short answer to that is yes. The long answer is actions matter more than thoughts. And if that's something that you truly believe, and I can't change your mind on that, but you don't use it as an excuse to persecute minorities, take rights away from them, try to prevent them from living their lives, at least I can respect that despite your homophobia, your homophobia is not something that you use as an excuse to be a bad person. The reality is that people only have a limited amount of control on their own thoughts. On their own thoughts and their own emotions. And I'd rather you be homophobic but nice than homophobic and oppressive. But I think it's also important to realize that a lot of things that you might not view as harmful are. Even if you yourself don't treat people differently, even if you think that being gay is a sin, if you preach that being gay is a sin, not everyone's gonna have the same self-control as you, and other people will persecute them based on that. And that's just a reality. Like that's how things work. Most of the time, people that think that being gay is bad do not keep it to themselves, which means that there are not a lot of people that are homophobic but actually not harmful. But if you can manage to overcome that, then I don't have a problem with you. Yeah, also, one of the biggest dangers with a situation like that is that if you actually are homophobic and trying not to, you know, be harmful with it, how will you react if someone you love turns out to be gay? Are you going to force them to deny themselves because you want to save them from hell? That's something that you would probably view as a good thing. Their suffering while on Earth being less important than their eternal happiness in heaven. And no logical argument will ever be able to convince you otherwise, because it's your faith, and faith is not necessarily a logical thing. But that comes back to you forcing your beliefs on others. But let them do what they want. If you can actually live up to those words, then that's good. And I hope that you can. But yeah, at the end of the day, it's a very nuanced topic. Is it wrong? Is it wrong to just not care about these things? Well, yes and no. I think the best way to explain it is, to me, okay, LGBT plus people don't exist in a vacuum outside of worldly problems. Objectively, they are discriminated against. They are disproportionately more often victims of crimes. They are disproportionately more unhappy due to external pressure that prevents them from being who they are. And those are facts. There is inequality that affects LGBTQ plus people as a whole. Complete apathy towards that is bad. In the same vein as complete apathy towards any inequality is bad. But I don't think that's what you mean when you ask, is it fine to not care, right? It's important to differentiate, I don't care whether or not someone is gay, from I don't care about gay people. The former, completely fine. The latter, you're a shitty person. Probably not. Thank you for the 8 months, Gasky. I just don't really care whether the person I talk to is gay or not. Yeah, then that's fine. I think it's important to realize that very often that's used by right-wing grifters as a talking point. Like, the left-wing nuts will force you to accept to care about these issues, and it's like, if you don't treat people differently based on their sexuality and don't actively contribute to their oppression, no one's gonna have a problem with you for that. You know? But it's very easy to conflate that with not caring about their struggles and their issues. And yeah, that's a very good point, Carlini. You can't be an activist for every cause in the world, but emphasizing with people is important. Caring is important in that sense. Exactly. Like, you don't have to be an LGBTQ plus rights activist to show that you care. The bare minimum is understanding the difference between I care whether they're gay or I care about them whether or not they're gay, right? I just have been called homophobic by people before because I said I'm not an activist and just let everybody do their thing. Again, right? Like that's very often just a communication issue. Right-wing grifters very often dog whistle by saying, I don't care whether someone is gay. And what they actually mean is, I don't care about the issues of gay people, and you shouldn't either. But by pretending like the issue is, I just don't care about your sexuality, they'll appeal to you, who also doesn't care about their sexuality, and seem reasonable. And when other people oppose that thought, understanding that it's a dog whistle for something else, you'll be like, oh, these people opposing this thought are unreasonable. I also have this thought. Why are they opposing it out of nowhere? It's a reasonable thought. Which, without understanding the context, is a completely understandable way to think. But that's because you don't understand the context. When people push back against you when you say things like that, it's not because they want you to value their sexuality as the forefront of their existence. It's because they think you mean something else. And communicating that that's not what you meant will very likely fix the situation. Word choice is important, I don't care, and I don't mind don't sound the same. That's also true. In context as well, right? Like, are you saying that... Okay. Let me give you two different situations. Situation one, you've been friends with someone for a couple weeks. You know, you met them a couple weeks ago. They've been pretty cool. You know, you hung out a couple times. You go out to a bar with a few friends, and they're like, hey guys, I have something to tell you guys that you know, it's been on my mind. I wanted to tell you guys about it. I'm gay. If you say, I don't care, in that situation, completely fine. Right? You're what they're expressing is, I have worries that you won't accept me despite me being gay. When you say I don't care, what you're conveying is your worries are unfounded. It's not something that will affect my perception of you. On the other hand, if you walk up to someone who you think fits gay stereotypes and you volunteer the information, I don't care whether or not you're gay, you're weird. That's... what the fuck? That's fucking weird. What you're communicating is, I don't want to know about you, stay away from me. Context matters. Even if you're using the same words, context matters a lot. I can't know the entire context for the situations in which you've had similar conversations in the past, but that's something you should keep in mind. The image of LGBTQ, okay, that's actually a very interesting point I want to talk about. Okay, let me fucking, oh my god, why is it doing this? I hate the chat sometimes. Anyways. The image of LGBTQ people is tainted by loud and obnoxious individuals who make their whole personality about being LGBTQ+. I think for a lot of people that aren't too interested in the topic, it becomes their main image. This isn't exclusive to LGBTQ. Any community has those people. I don't think that's a good way of thinking about it. I used to think similar. I used to think very similarly, but as I got older, I realized what you're effectively communicating with that thought is, I can't accept people that fit the stereotype. I don't mind if you're gay, just don't act gay. And that's a dangerous thought to have. As a general rule, there's a lot of overlap between people who... How do I explain that well? Right, that's the word. As a general rule, there's a lot of overlap between people who are sex positive and people who are LGBTQ+. Because people who are LGBTQ+ and people who are sex positive tend to face pressure and resistance from the same people. If you grow up in an environment that's accepting towards gay people, it's a lot more likely that they're also accepting of sex positivity. Which is likely why the stereotype became what it was. As a general rule, gay people do tend to be more sex positive. That doesn't mean what is sex positive? It's... basically, it means that you don't view sex as something that is bad or tainted or whatever. Like, sex is... You've used sex as a thing you can do. That makes you feel good. But the idea that, you know, they can't... I don't mind gay people, but, you know, they don't have to be in my face about it. They don't have to be obnoxious. What you're conveying isn't homophobia. It's that you don't like sex positivity. Which isn't something that is, like, as bad as homophobia. But it ends up contributing to the oppression of gay people. Because of... What is it? What's it called again? Because of intersectionality. Or whatever the fuck the word is. I can't view sex negatively? I mean, that depends on what you mean by negatively. You mean... I don't like it and I don't want to have it? Or do you mean... I think people who have sex are tainted and should be stoned to death? Because if it's the former, that's completely fine. Part of sex positivity is to allow for the freedom to decide for yourself what you want to do with your body. I think being asexual is very much... Being asexual is not at all... And fuck. It's not at all opposed to sex positivity. Although I know that, like... I know that, like... Within the asexual spectrum, there's people that are sex repulsed. And I think that people that are not sex repulsed also refer to themselves as sex positive. I'm not talking about the same concept. I wanna... I wanna clarify that. What do you think is the reason for the sudden rise in homophobia and transphobia? It's not really... It's not necessarily that there's a rise in it. It's that... being a right-wing grifter is very profitable. And so it attracts a lot of people. Which in turn breeds much more active thoughts of homophobia. It's not that more people are homophobic, it's that people that are homophobic are more vocal and, like, think more actively about it. Sex positivity doesn't mean positive to cheating. No, not at all. But part of sex positivity is the acceptance that other people may view sex differently from you. And that's okay. You're obviously not required to be in a relationship with someone who views sex differently from you. Right? Like that's not the same thing, obviously. Like, if your partner's like, hey, I'm poly, like, Ribozo, it's not necessarily sex, like, you're not betraying sex positivity if you're like, well, I don't think I can handle that, let's break up. Nor are you betraying sex positivity if you're hurt by that. And it's completely normal to be like, oh, fuck, that really sucks. It's like it, and to want it not to be the case because you want to be with that person is completely normal, right? But accepting that other people view the world differently from you when it comes to sex is what sex positivity is about, right? Being broken up with sucks no matter the circumstances. Yeah, but like, that situation is not getting broken up with. It's you breaking up with the other person because you're not compatible. And honestly, you could argue that hurts even more. And you know both people are gonna get hurt. It's gonna feel like a bad breakup. It's gonna feel for both people like they got broken up with, basically. I don't envy people in that situation. It's very sad. All the relationships require an insane amount of communication. Any relationship needs that, though, yeah. Bro, just yapping to one person is hard enough, dude. It's hard enough as it is. But yeah. Anyways, this was a bit of a tangent. Sorry about that. It was a good one though. The bottom line is, as long as you're not French, you're awesome. True! It was a good combo, so do I. But yeah, actually, one thing I want to say to chat at large is... And I want to say it because of you, Hopeful, and I really appreciate you taking your time to, like, talk in chat today. It can be difficult to fight the vitriolic tendency to be angry with people who are homophobic or transphobic or anything like that. And it is not your responsibility to educate. It shouldn't be. That being said, patience and understanding are always more productive than derision and humiliation. Right? The chatter is homophobic. That's something that I've stated, and that honestly I stand by. And I don't think that's something that's not really something I'm okay with. Right? But nonetheless, it's more productive to focus on the actions than to insult them for being homophobic. They're homophobic, and they are because of their religion, and it's not something I'm going to be able to change. What I can do is say, I don't like that you're homophobic, and I don't think it's disputable whether or not you are. But I can appreciate the effort you're making not to let that affect how you treat others. It's something that is very difficult to do, and I realize that part of why I can do it is because I'm not gay. I haven't been on the receiving end of homophobia in my life ever. I've been called gay as an insult. I've been insulted by people who thought I was gay, and I've been insulted because I stood up for gay people. But I've never had the gut-wrenching feeling of being looked down upon by someone because I'm gay. And I realize that that's part of why it's probably easier for me than it is for you not to let that vitriol dictate how I treat other people. But for those of you in chat that are also straight, or for those of you that have a stronger spirit than I do, I highly recommend patience and communication. It also shouldn't be. Yeah, I said that already, Carlini. But again, right? You can recognize that it's not your responsibility. True. You can appreciate that it's not your responsibility while still understanding that it is one thing that you can do to help, right? Whether or not you do it is going to be your own decision, and I'm not saying you're a bad person if you don't do it. There's a lot of factors that go into everything, but realizing that it's an action that has a tangible, objective, positive outcome, and encouraging that action is something that I want to do. I won't look down on you if you don't have it in you, or you don't have the patience for that shit. I will ask that you don't insult the chatters that I'm trying to reason with while I'm trying to reason with them. That's something I hope you can do. But outside of that, I'm not gonna look down on you for not wanting to deal with their bullshit. Only insult them if they're beyond reason. I mean, the reality is, like, I'm far from perfect, right? I also let the vitriolic desire to fucking tell them to kill themselves when they say really, really bad shit. I let it get the best of me sometimes, you know? Like, I'm far from perfect. And I don't feel good about that. But I try to extend the same kindness to myself that I do to others, and be and to forgive myself for it. While also telling myself I should try my best not to, you know? You think Milani will be clunky like Linny? I think she'll be a lot less clunky than Linny, but I don't think she's gonna be unclunky either. She's gonna be clunkish. Honestly, I feel like she's gonna be like Hu Tao in terms of clunkiness. Like, it's not really clunky, but, like, it can be. Who's the character you're hyped for the most in the Notland roster? I mean, I don't really care about what they look like. So, right now, it's Kanich because his kit is cool. And we only have the kits of 3 characters. If you ask me just based on their visual design, it would probably also be Kanich because of the jaw. Do you agree with people saying Shalina is busted and needs a nerf? We don't even know what she does yet. So no, I don't agree. We have vague leaks that don't tell us much. People were saying it on the League subreddit. Who is people? Communities like Reddit are not reliable sources of information. Not because no one on Reddit is reliable, but because there's a lot of people on Reddit. People will yap. The best way you have of getting reliable information is to find one person you think is reliable and ask them. Or, ideally, find a few people you think are reliable and ask all of them. And compare what they think to one another. Right? That's part of why, even though I know that it's objectively going to hurt the success of my stream, when I think there are other theory crafters that have good and thought out opinions, I tell you guys about them, and I encourage you to watch their content. Because you'll make better decisions that way. I can't say I do it happily. I can't say it doesn't make me feel a little shitty to do it. And I wish it didn't. I wish I could just do it and not feel scared, I guess, about it. But unfortunately, I'm a pussy who's scared for his future. Scared about what? Part of why my stream is successful is because I was the first one to do theory crafting content in a way that was open and clear. And then I established a reputation for myself because of that. When other people that are in the same niche as me appear, it threatens my livelihood. That's just a fact. And it sucks. It really sucks. I still recommend other theory crafters because while what I've said is the reason why I've been successful, it's not the reason why I did what I did, right? I didn't set out to fill a niche because I thought I could get successful that way. I set out to solve a problem that I thought wouldn't get solved without me. Right? The state of TC when I started streaming was awful. Honestly, I can't say I even took streaming too seriously until Jinx quit. The main reason why I started taking it seriously is because I felt like I needed to if I wanted there to be good information out there. Right? And that's the reason why, despite it being a threat to my livelihood, I try to shout out other creators, even the ones that do similar things as me. It's because I care more about the problem being fixed than I care about me being the one who's solving the problem. Tenten was pretty good. No, Tenten had his moments. I don't know if you guys knew this. You probably didn't if you're new here, but my very first interaction with Tenten was basically me shit-talking him in a Reddit post. Because one of his videos I thought was fucking dog shit, and I made a Reddit post explaining why it was ass, basically. Can you link the post? I don't know. It was a long time ago. Yeah, that's why at the very beginning I reacted a lot more to things. I watched a lot of other people's videos because the fire under my ass, my motivation when I started was to correct misinformation. Nowadays, there's good information available from reputable sources that people know are reputable. People that make videos, people that are unreliable and often wrong, either got a lot better, like Gacha Gamer, or, as much as I hate to admit it sometimes, I win to lose. And people that have continuously given dogshit takes didn't really manage to carry over the momentum that they had at the start of the game. Meanwhile, meanwhile, guide content creators have started consulting a lot more with theory crafters, and the base random guide you see on your recommended is a lot better now than it used to be, right? Nick with me, Sevi with Migos, kind of set the standard of don't just yap for the sake of yapping. There are hundreds, if not thousands, of people that actually enjoy doing the numbers. Just ask them. And with that culture, the need to correct misinformation so that people aren't baited into spending money on things they don't want or need has mostly disappeared. In other words, you changed the world. I mean, if it wasn't me, it would have been someone else, probably. But, you know, sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I didn't help Nick with his guides. Because a very big reason why his channel got popular is because his guides were reliable. A lot more reliable than others. And without me, that would not have been the case. Now he can get by without me just fine. But at the start, bro, I still remember, so you guys know about the Albedo incident, right? But many of you guys probably don't know why it happened. The reason why the Albedo incident happened is because we weren't talking at that time. And the reason we weren't talking is because I was fucking pissed at him. Because I thought he didn't take it seriously. He had sent me a video to review, and I reviewed it, and I was like, these things are misleading or wrong. And there were some things that were misleading or wrong that he didn't change. And I was like, dude, what the fuck? And he was like, it's not that big of a deal. And so I got really fucking pissed at him. And I blocked him, and we stopped talking for like 2 or 3 months. And it was during that time that he posted the Albedo video. It might not have been months, it might have been weeks, I don't know, it's been a while now. I don't know if he would have gone through that growth arc if it wasn't for that fight. I don't know if he would have started to actually care about the quality of the information if it wasn't for me. Because at the start, he didn't care, but I did. Now, he does care. What did he say? So, at the time when Cinnabar Spindle wasn't in the game, Albedo's best game by a long shot was Harbinger of Dawn. And Nick didn't even mention it. He mentioned Traveler's Handy Sword instead. It was an awful video. He talked about his how important and good Albedo's burst was. It wasn't it. Okay, it was not it. He talked about Summit Shaper. It was not it. Now it's much more than just his guides. Yeah, but and I'm not gonna say I'm the reason he's successful, because he probably could have made it even if it wasn't as a guide video maker, right? But sometimes I do wonder what the guide content creation landscape would look like if it wasn't for me. Anyways. Sorry if this is off topic, but why do people keep hating on you on Twitter for some random reason? Is there lore behind you getting hated on every post, or just Genshin randos? A lot of people get hated. It's a reality that the bigger of a content creator you are, the more there's going to be people that know of you but that don't like you. in my case specifically, I used to be very vocal about misinformation, like I've talked about already, and I attracted a lot of vitriol from the fan bases of content creators I called out for lying out of their ass. There was a time when I tried to mediate some drama as well. Before I realized that drama content creators weren't immature, they knew what they were doing, and they were manufacturing drama because it makes them money. Back when I was an innocent and naive child who thought that drama happened because of misunderstandings, I tried to mediate drama, and I attracted the ire of some very impactful drama content creators because I was being reasonable, and that fucked with their manufactured drama bullshit. Because their whole thing is creating drama and keeping it going as long as it's possible so they can milk it as much as possible. So me being reasonable and understanding was an obstacle to that. So they didn't like it very much. But, yeah. And then there's the fact that I'm also very vocally pro-LGBTQ+, and against bigotry, which is gonna attract hate from a whole different crowd. Although I say whole different crowd, there's a lot of overlap between drama content watchers and bigots. Anyways, it is what it is, as they say. Here's a circle of you, JStar, DGS, and Jamie is the best what TC meta Genshin has on Twitch and YouTube. Yeah, I think if you watch all four of us, you're pretty likely to get a good understanding of a character. I think all four of us view the game from a different perspective. Although I think my and TGS's perspective is relatively similar, all things considered. He's probably the one who views the game through a lens that's the most similar to mine when it comes to meta content creators. But But yeah, I don't think I've ever had a disagreement on them that wasn't like irrelevant. Like, I've had a lot of disagreements with J Stern, but that's just because he likes arguing. It's not really fundamental disagreements. Like, pretty much every single disagreement we've had is the sort of stuff where you can safely agree to disagree. In the sense that, like, it doesn't actually matter which character of two is stronger overall. What matters is that you communicate their strengths and weaknesses in a way that an external observer will be able to make choices based on those strengths and weaknesses. And disagreement on who the best Hydro character is don't really matter at the end of the day. But I mean, it's part of why I don't talk to J Stern as much as I used to. I don't mind having discussions with people that have different thoughts as mine. But J Stern likes to argue. He doesn't like to discuss, he likes to argue. And it gets really annoying sometimes. Like, sometimes there's no need for an argument, but he turns it into one. And it's just frustrating, because I don't like arguing. Yeah. It's why I like talking with Jamie and TGS more. It's so impressive how Jamie's able to collaborate with you and TGS and still avoid leaks. Yeah, I mean, I'm mindful of it when I talk with him. Like, when there's league-related stuff, I try to express it in a way where, like, I give him the freedom of deciding whether he wants to know or not. Anyways. Are you looking forward to making on-set goblets? I don't actually know, honestly. I don't know if I am. I'm making an emblem ER Sans. Yeah, I've been like... I don't know. Maybe it's time to get myself a Vermilion set. That's actually good. Thoughts? Imagine I get a better Vermilion than Nick. But I don't know what I'd want. I guess a good Pyro Goblet on Emblem would be nice. Maybe something like this. I don't even know. Can you use the new stuff on the new artifact sets, or is it just the ones that are in Strongbox? Any knowers? Probably. Not sure. All sets, new ones too? Okay. I'll probably just do it on the new ones then. Alright, by the way, chat. It's like 30 hours. Yeah, okay. We can finish spending our resin. Go back to 0. It's not very convenient farming on-set goblets. It requires more resources. I mean, it is more expensive, but it's also harder to get to begin with. I wonder if I still have my artifact odds sheet somewhere. I probably do. Ooh, 4-star artifact. Is Can HP release almost done yet? I do not know. Haven't had news since yesterday. Anyways, I think it's time to do a banner review. Banner review? Wow! Ka-china? Ka-ching? Haha. Alright, say hi to YouTube. Hello, beautiful people, and welcome. Hi! To Banner Review for 5.0. We have Molani coming out with a Kazuha rerun. On the banner, we have Kachina, a new Geo 4-star. Xinyan, and Bennett. On the weapon banner, we have Molani's signature, Kazuha's signature, and then we have Stringless, Favonia's sword, Sacrificial Codex, Dragon's Bane, and Favonia's Greatsword. So let's talk about it. I'm going to talk a little bit more about Kachina than I usually do about 4 stars because I didn't end up doing a Kachina pre-release. So this is going to serve as a pseudo Kachina pre-release inside of the banner review. If you're not that interested in Kachina, you can use the timestamps to navigate through the video to whichever sections you care about. But first off, we're going to talk about the 5 stars. I think I want to start with Kazuha because I don't think there's as much to say about him. This is far from the first Kazuha rerun. We've had many what the hell? What did they change about Amber? Yeah, whatever. They changed the UI on Amber somehow. Maybe they cleared cookies or something, I don't know. But it feels different. Anyways, yeah, so first we can talk about Kazuha. This is far from his first run. He's had multiple reruns already. Kazuha is a very known character. Many people already know how good he is, but oh, they have a quotes thing now. Right? I forgot. Guides as well. Oh. Wait, that's kind of cool. This is funny. That's probably me, honestly. Anyways. So, Kazuha is an Anemo support that has been at the forefront of the meta since he came out in 1.6. His whole thing is that he's a very versatile VV trigger. He has good grouping that is easy to use. His buffs are useful in any team that cares about VV because it gives damage percent, which is a stat that any character can use, whether they trigger reactions or not, whether they scale with attack, HP, or defense. If it's damage that can be VV'd, it's damage that can be buffed by Kazuha. Almost. I guess that's not the case for transformative reaction damage, but for the most part, if it can be VV'd, it can be buffed by Kazuha. That by itself isn't really enough, but he also, well, it's not that it's not really enough. That by itself is good and all, but he's another one of his very useful traits is the way his absorption works. Both his skill and his burst absorb elements, the same absorption priority as the default one, which is Pyro, then Hydro, then Electro, then Cryo, which can be very useful when it comes to setting up off-field application for Pyro, which is pretty pog by using his burst. Or when it comes to doing double swirl setups that self-infuse Pyro inside of Bennett's burst. All in all, he's just a very versatile character that fits in a lot of different teams. He has the ability He has the ability to use a 2U Animo attack, which can be very useful when it comes to triggering Swirl on frozen targets and potentially triggering Swirl on both Hydro and Cryo at the same time. All in all, he just has a lot of utility and is very easy to use. All of that being said, I also think that Kazuha is an overrated character. Not because he's not as good as... Well, not because he's not as good as people think he is, but rather because he's not as important as people think he is. While it's not the case in every team, obviously, Sucrose is a very good replacement for him in many, many teams. And ever since Sumeru's release, we've had more and more teams that aren't reliant on triggering Vivi. He is far from a bad character. But I think it's important to talk about him not being like just head and shoulders above everything else, because you know people have limited primo gems, and if you don't like him or play the characters that he's really good with, and you pull him and then end up benching him, then that's a waste of your primo gems. Kazuha is one of the characters that to this day I use quite often. When it comes to characters I use very often, I would say it's Arlecchino, Bennett, Kazuha, Zhongli, Keiya, Kenyon Chao, Venti, Raiden. I don't know if anybody's gonna make it yet, maybe, I'm not sure. Baiju, Nahida, Farina, Neuvillette, Ilan, Dea, Hutao, Farazan, Sucrose, Fischl, Beto, Kuki, Xingto, Toma, Shengling, Eizo. I don't know if I forgot anyone, maybe, but... Yeah, obviously not everyone's gonna play the game in the same ways that I do, but despite me not thinking that Kazuha is that interesting of a character, I do still use him very often because he fits in a lot of different teams. I just want to make it clear, just because I'm saying that a character is overrated, that doesn't mean I think he's bad, nor does that mean I think I don't play him. All in all, when it comes to just general recommendations, Kazuha is the sort of character that is going to open up options on almost every account. If you already have a clear idea of the teams you want to play, and neither of them, and none of them include Kazuha, he's far from necessary. But if you have primos lying around and you're not particularly interested in any of the upcoming characters that you would need to save for, he's a very safe character to pick up. You're unlikely to feel like you wasted your primos. He's definitely one of the better 5 stars to get. When it comes to constellations, they're kind of ass. His C1 is pretty not great. I think a lot of people underestimate how long his animations are. Yes, getting more getting one more E gives you better grouping, more 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 particles, more damage, but it also takes more time. And very often, you swap to Kazuha after you set up your other buffs, because Kazuha's buffs don't last as long as other characters' buffs. So spending more time on him means you end up having less buff uptime on your other on your carries. Because of that, you don't actually use C1 very often in setups, even if you do have it. It's more so a constellation that ends up being useful for setting, for like grouping the enemies up at the start before you go into your setup. It's not bad, but it's yeah, very, very whatever. C2 is pretty good, but it's a lot more limited than I think a lot of people realize. C2 is only good in melt and vape teams. Technically, it's also fine in salad, but I know people don't tend to play him very much in those teams. The main thing that C2 does is it gives your team a lot of EM. But if your team isn't triggering reactions, that doesn't matter. Another way to look at it is the only teams in which C2 makes a difference are the teams where Sucrose would also be good. Those teams definitely exist, for sure. But if they're not the teams you're playing, then C2 will not help you very much. The amount of damage you gain from the 200 EM to himself is just not that much. I'm not really interested in looking at the later constellations. I don't think that matters too much when it comes to a banner review. And we'll talk about his weapon later on when we talk about the weapon banner. Which means we can talk about Milani. New character. I've already posted a pre-release. Milani is a very interesting character that fills a niche that didn't exist previously. We've never had a proper forward vape carry before. We've had hydro characters that can be played in forward vape teams, right? Nevilet's best speedrun team is often a forward vape team with Shangling. I forgot Sijuin was out. High Constellation Nilo is often played in forward vape teams, but yeah. I know there's some people that like seeing the big numbers on Yelan's E when you vape it. Same for Mona Burst. And obviously Child vapes his Burst, even if you're playing him in a team where the main purpose is to vape Shangling, not him. But an actually dedicated vape carry is not something we've ever had before. Which makes her interesting whether or not she's good. For those of you that haven't watched the pre-release, I'll very quickly summarize what she does. When you use her skill, she starts surfing. When she goes through enemies, she gets stacks, and at 3 stacks, she chomps. She surfs on her shark, and at 3 stacks, the shark attacks the enemy. And you can do that a few times. Surfing itself doesn't apply Hydro, which means that she only hits the enemy with Hydro relatively slowly when you do the chomps after passing through 3 enemies, or the same enemy 3 times. Which makes her very well suited to forward vaping, especially because the chomps don't have ICD. In terms of value for an account, It's very hard for me to say. I think she'll be a slightly above middle of the pack character. But honestly, I'm not entirely sure. Milani has gone through many, many nerfs in beta. Her first version was completely bonkers broken. And since then, she has taken heavy nerfs. So it's hard for me to try to evaluate her in a vacuum because I can't separate her from the image of her that I had in her first beta version. So in order to solidify my stance on how strong she is, I'll have to test her. So I'm looking forward to that, but that also does mean that I'm not too confident in my thoughts on how good she is. I can safely say that she won't be bad, but how good, I can't. I'm not sure yet. Make sure you tune in. Hopefully we get this video out before the patch, but as soon as the patch drop, I'll be streaming. So make sure you drop by on twitch.tv/Zajef77. But yeah, something that I mentioned in the pre-release and that I want to reiterate here is that despite her being like Neuvillette, an HP scaling hydro catalyst that is supposed to be a non-fielder, she actually functions quite differently from him and has teams that are pretty different from his, which means that it can be very easy to create two teams with no overlap between them, one for Neuvillette and one for Molani. So as much as there are a lot of similarities between them, that doesn't mean that Molani is gonna get benched all the time if you already have Neuvillette and she ends up, you know, not shining as bright as he does. Because just like a character of another element or another weapon type or another scaling type, you can just play her on the second side. Anyways, let's get into the 4 stars. We're going to start with Kachina, which is a new upcoming character that I have not done a pre-release on. So we will do a shortened version of a pre-release right now. Base HP, 11,799. Base attack, 217. Base defense, 792. Base stats don't matter too much because she's not really an on-fielder. But her base defense is relatively high, which... well, she's a defense scaler, so that's nice, I guess. Geo damage ascension, cool. Normal attacks don't really matter. Elemental skill E, go turbo twirly. Fight alongside the turbo trusty turbo twirly. Summon turbo twirly. When the skill is held and released, Kachina will summon and ride turbo twirly. After the skill is used, Kachina will gain 69 soul points and enter the Night Soul's Blessing. Turbo Twirly's various actions consume Kachina Night Soul points. The Night Soul Blessing state will end when these points have been depleted. Turbo Twirly can exist independently or be ridden and operated by Kachina. When Turbo Twirly is present, Kachina's elemental skill will be changed to an option to mount or dismount Turbo Twirly. When present, independent of Kachina, so when you're not mounting it, it will slam the ground at intervals, dealing Night Soul aligned AoE geo damage based on Kachina's defense. When Kachina is riding it, he can control it to move and climb swiftly and use normal attacks to slam the ground, dealing Night Soul aligned AoE geo damage based on Kachina's defense. Turbo Twirly will disappear once the blessing ends and is considered a geo construct. And only one can exist at a time. It does not do that much damage. It doesn't hit that many times. It is pretty bad. Elemental Burst. Time to get serious. Striking the ground, Kachina deals AoE geo damage based on her defense and creates a turbo drill field. The field increases Turbo Twirly's attack AoE and its movement speed while Kachina is riding it. If Kachina's own Turbo Twirly is present when this is used, the Turbo Twirly will be summoned to her side. The damage on this is not that good either. It is what it is. Passives. After nearby party members trigger a Night Soul Burst, Kachina's geo damage bonus is increased by 20% for 12 seconds. This doesn't really matter. Turbo Twirly's damage is increased by 20% of Kachina's defense. That's cool, but it doesn't really matter. This doesn't really matter. This is an exploration passive, and so is this. Basically, Kachina is albedo but bad. Let's look at our constellations. Actually, no. Before we look at the constellations, we need to look at the new artifacts. Scroll of the Hero of Cinder City. The fucking wall of text, but it is what it is. When a nearby party member triggers a Night Soul Burst, the equipping character regenerates 6 energy. So basically, you get 6 to 12 energy per rotation. After the equipping character triggers a reaction related to their elemental type, so in Kachina's case, when she triggers Crystallize, all nearby party members gain a 12% elemental damage bonus increase for the elemental types involved in the elemental reaction. So 12% geo damage and 12% damage of whatever element you crystallized. If the equipping character is in the Night Soul's Blessing state when triggering this effect, all nearby party members gain an additional 28% elemental damage, so for a total of 40, for the elemental types involved in the reaction for 20 seconds. Which lasts for a bit longer for some reason. I don't really know why, but okay, cool. The equipping character can trigger this effect while off field, and the damage bonus from artifact sets with the same name do not stack. In other words, if the character is from Natlan, when they trigger a reaction, even if off field, it gives 40% damage percent to their element and the element of the reaction they triggered with. If they're not from Natlan, it's only 12. Kachina, unlike albedo, is from Natlan. In other words, you can think of her as albedo, where you trade some of his damage for a buff to the team. Her damage is pretty ass, but a 40% buff can be kind of useful. Constellation. When Kachina mounts or dismounts Turbo Twirly, she will absorb nearby elemental shards created by Crystallize. Additionally, when a party member picks up such a shard, 3 energy will be restored to Kachina. This doesn't really do anything. When Kachina uses Time to Get Serious, she will regain 20 Night Soul points. If there is no Turbo Twirly belonging to her on the field, she will enter Night Soul's Blessing and summon 1. This gives her a little bit more uptime on her Twirly, right? 33% more uptime. Helps her damage a little bit, but her damage isn't that good to begin with, so... D3, skill talent levels, also helps her damage, but damage isn't very good to begin with, so When there are 1, 2, 3, 4 or more opponents within the Turbo Drill field, the active character within the field gains 8, 12, 16, or 20% increased defense. So active character gains defense based on amount of enemies nearby. This can be somewhat useful in Geo teams if you can fit her in Geo teams. C5, Time to Get Serious. So ult levels, 3 ult levels, it's whatever. And C6, when your active character's shield is replaced or destroyed for any reason, Kachina will deal 200% of her defense as AoE geo damage. This effect can be triggered once every 5 seconds. This works on Crystallize, so it's relatively reliable. The damage of it is fine. Overall, between C0 and C6, her damage does get a decent amount bigger, but because it's so small to begin with, it's not that big of a difference to your team DPS, and you still want to use her on the new Natlan set, which is not a set that is focused on personal damage. Which means that her constellations don't actually matter that much. She's not too significantly different between C1 or between C0 and C6. So she's a sort of character that's kind of useful to have, but where constellations don't matter too much. And we get her for free, as far as I understand, in Natlan Exploration. So her being on the banner is not really something you're too happy with. That being said, I do think of her as a bit more useful than like the average garbage 4-star character. And if you do use her, then C6 is better than C0, even if it's not by that much. So it's fine. But yeah. Overall, Kachina's just fine. She's okay. There's really not that much to say, which is why I haven't done a full pre-release on her. As a general rule, you would just use her in similar places where you'd use Albedo. When you care about about getting buffs to the rest of the team, and you can reliably proc the right reaction for it. It's going to be her biggest obstacle in Geo teams, is that you can't play her in mono Geo, like with 4 Geo, because then she can't proc a Geo reaction. Which is, oh, yeah. She is going to be a very useful free-to-play alternative for stuff like Neuvillette teams, though. Because she gives a pretty decent buff with an easy-to-fulfill condition, as well as some defensive utility by triggering off-field Crystallize. So I can see her being pretty alright in Neuvillette teams. For people that don't have Zhongli or that want to use Zhongli in a different team. But yeah. Is it better than slotting in Fischl in a Neuvillette team? Fischl doesn't have the defensive utility that Crystallize provides. And yeah, because Kachina's value comes from her artifact set, not her actual damage, you can actually think about building her EM for crystallized shield strength if you really want to. And it's not actually that bad of an idea. But yeah, anyways, let's move on. But yeah, that being said, you don't really need that on an Neuvillette team, but whatever. Next up, we have Bennett. Actually, yeah. Bennett is, as many of you guys already know, one of the best characters in the game. He's very, very good. He's Poggers. Everyone loves Bennett. Except people that don't. I guess there are a lot of people that don't like Bennett because of how good he is. I don't think I need to go too much into detail about what he does. Bennett, to this day, is still a very popular character. He's not present in as many teams. Well, no. He's not present in as high of a percentage of teams as he used to be a long time ago. But he is present in many more teams overall because there's just many more teams available now. And he shows no sign of becoming less valuable anytime soon. Maybe Pyro Archon's going to change that, but I doubt it, honestly. Bennett's one of Bennett's biggest strength, which also happens to be one of the reasons why I'm never too happy to see him on a banner, is that he's not really reliant on his constellations. C1, outside of the just 20% additional attack you get, the removing the restriction doesn't actually help you get buff uptime unless you get hit and lose HP, which doesn't mean it won't happen, but does mean that it's not necessary. C1 is useful to have, but it's not the kind of constellation that's really necessary for a character to work. That being said, it's arguably his best constellation outside of C6, which we'll talk about a little bit, obviously. C2, pretty useless. Bennett's HP should never be below 70%. He does a tick of healing very early when you use his burst. And a build Bennett is going to heal you incredibly quickly. And you're not supposed to stay on him unless you're playing him as a carry, in which case his HP would go back to above 70% incredibly easily anyways. Basically, Bennett's C2 just doesn't work. It doesn't do anything. It can be useful in Farina teams, but Farina teams tend to have decent particle generation, so it doesn't even tend to be useful. Like, it tends to actually work, it tends to function, but not actually be significant with Farina, because you don't really need the energy. C3 doesn't really do too much unless you're playing him as a carry. Bennett carry is very good. The only thing that prevents Bennett carry from seeing that much play is that people don't really like him. And Bennett carry is not really a team that is necessarily better than your best available team with Bennett as a support. So people don't tend to really care much to even try Bennett carry. But as it turns out, Bennett's buffs are not reliant on his build. So you can build him on a carry build and still get all of the buffs from him. And then that leaves you one slot that would otherwise be Bennett that can be another off-field damage dealer or buffer. And as it turns out, in a lot of situations, that's enough to make it better than if you were to play a carry that has better scalings than Bennett. Bennett is just a pretty strong carry overall. There's not too much to say about that. He's very strong in double vape teams with Shangling and double hydro, or in plunge teams with Xianyan. Or over vape teams. But yeah. That being said, I know a lot of people, despite him being strong in those teams, I don't play him in those teams that much because it means I have to change his build and then change it back when I want to play something different, which is a pain in the ass because we don't actually have artifact presets. So that sucks. But anyways. C4 is not too good. It has some useful properties. There are some setups that are a lot easier to do with his C4 with a hold E than they are with timing. Mainly Farina setups, or setups for double swirl in teams that use Farina and Xianyan. His C4 can be pretty useful for those. But it's not necessary. It just makes them easier. C5, burst levels, which increases his healing and his the attack scaling on his buff. Obviously, pretty good constellation. And finally, C6 gives 15% pyro damage bonus. It says sword, claymore, and polearm wielding characters. That's not actually true. It's poorly translated or just poorly described in the original text. It's 15% unconditional pyro damage, and sword, claymore, or polearm characters are infused with pyro. This constellation is one of the most impactful constellations for any 4-star character. If you could activate it or deactivate it at will, it would probably be one of the most valuable constellations to have out of any character. But unfortunately, once you've activated it, you can't deactivate it. For most characters, that's not really that big of a deal. But that's not the case for every character. I used to think that Ayaka was going to be the last character that didn't, or that didn't get proper coding to not be fucked by Bennett's C6, because most characters that got infusion that were released after Ayaka specifically said that it could not be overridden. But Chiori's release has made it clear that that is not the case. Chiori at C6 is a very strong carry, but her Geo Infusion gets overridden by Bennett's Pyro Infusion, and she is actually weaker if you have Bennett's C6 than if you don't. Because her best team by far uses Bennett, which means that they have effectively confirmed that they don't really give that much of a shit about you if you've C6 your Bennett. Now, that's only the case for a C6 well character in Chiori, so I'm not going to tell you... I'm not going to tell you that you shouldn't activate it because of that, but it's definitely something to keep in mind. Personally, I activated it, and I'm glad I did. The only team that I play on which it's a pain is TF Bennett. Activating C6 is the main reason I don't play TF Bennett anymore, because triggering the Thundering Fury effect on his normal attacks because of the Pyro Infusion fucks with the cooldown of it and makes it so that you don't get it reliably anymore, which really sucks and makes me sad, because I really liked playing TF Bennett before, but it is what it is. I have to accept it. But yeah. Finally, we have Xinyan. Xinyan, to put it bluntly, is not a good character. However, she does have some properties that can be useful. Mainly, if her shield doesn't break, she has off-field pyro application that is pretty decent. And every time you swap character while her shield is active, you self-apply pyro to your character for a little bit, which means you can use that self-pyro application to absorb Kazuha's skill. Because pyro has the highest priority when it comes to absorption for most Anemo characters, that means you can effectively use it to get a pyro swirl even if the enemy is not affected with pyro. Something I've talked about in the Molani pre-release, because I think that Xinyan is going to be a viable character in Molani teams. But just to quickly showcase how it's going to work, Milani is a Catalyst user, so you would start with a normal attack on her. Or maybe have a 4-slot that just vibes or whatever. You start with a normal attack on Milani, then you Xinyan E, and then Kazuha E. And we can see we get the buff on Pyro and on Hydro. The Pyro buff itself doesn't matter that much, but having that Pyro applied to the enemy means that you can then use Kazuha's Burst. As your source of Pyro application, so that you can bait Milani stuff. Does that also work on Sucrose? Yes and no. Yes, it works on Sucrose, but Sucrose's absorption doesn't work the same way as Kazuha. So you'd have to do something like this. Where you walk into the middle of it and then swap. And the swap self Pyro, if you're in the middle of this, is gonna give you the Pyro aura. That being said, as much as this stuff is cool and sometimes kind of useful, it is clunky. I thought that with Milani's first, and for those of you that follow me on Twitter, you might have seen that tweet. With Milani's first iteration, her uptime was a lot shorter and she did a lot more damage, which meant that VV teams were a lot stronger. And in that first version, I thought that Xinyan was actually one of the best. Like, I thought that the Kazuha Xinyan team was one of the best Milani teams. But with the Milani nerfs, her uptime being made to be longer and her damage lowered, VV teams got a lot worse. So I don't think that Xinyan is the best Milani team anymore, but I do think she can be a viable teammate. That being said, I would not put Xinyan above the other defensive Pyro options anymore. Xinyan's constellations just don't matter outside of her C2. Her C2 guarantees crit on the physical hit, but that's not even the part that matters. The part that matters is that the C2 also forms a shield level 3 when you cast it, when you cast your ult. And the shield level 3 is the only one that applies Pyro. In single target, without C2, you don't have a way to get a shield level 3, which means you can't get AoE Pyro from the shield. Which means that you need C2 for her to be a reliable source of Pyro. Even in single target. But even then, the Pyro stops if the shield is broken, and the shield is pretty weak. Which means that she's still not a reliable source of Pyro. Which is her biggest issue. If she kept applying Pyro even after the shield broke, she would be a lot more valuable. But the fact that that's not the case really limits your options. She has a lot of stuff in her kit that pretends like it's related to physical damage, but it sucks so much that it doesn't matter. And that's just not very good, unfortunately. So that does it for the characters on these banners. I would say that the banners they're actually pretty good beginner banners. Kazuha is obviously a great character to get. Mualani is pretty at least going to be somewhat strong. And Kachina is a relatively versatile character that can kind of be put wherever, even if she's not that good. With Bennett being a very good character to have that is not too dependent on his constellations. For people that have been playing for a longer time, I think these banners are kind of ass. The 5 stars are, I mean, obviously Kazuha's always a pretty good character to have, but I think he's also one of the characters with the highest ownership rate. So a lot of people already have him, and his constellations don't do too much. Milani's overall, again, not entirely sure, but I think she's gonna end up being on the stronger side. But yeah, Bennett constellations aren't particularly good. You get Kachina for free anyways, and her cons don't do too much, and Chinian kind of just sucks. So I would say that for like beginner players, it's a completely fine first banner. For longer time players, I'm not too happy about it. Personally, I really hate it because Kachina was a guaranteed, and I already have Bennett and Chinian at C6, so I hate this very much. But yeah. Anyways, finally we can talk about the weapon banner. So, Freedom Sworn is ass. I don't like Freedom Sworn. I think it's not a very good weapon. I hate it. I am a Freedom Sworn hater. I am sworn to be a hater. I really hate it. I think it's ass. The biggest issue with Freedom Sworn is that it is a signature weapon that's very like tailored towards Kazuha. But the buffs that it gives aren't useful for Kazuha himself. And they're not actually useful in every team where you use Kazuha. There's actually not that many teams that can take advantage of both the 16% damage increase and the 20% attack. You look at Elegy, which is Freedom Sworn's counterpart for bows. Elegy for the end gives you EM and attack, and there's a pretty decent amount of characters that are attack scalers that trigger reactions. So it tends to be easy to make use of both buffs. In the case of Freedom Sworn, we look at the teams that use Kazuha. Pretty much the only teams that actually take advantage of both properly is Ganyu teams, which are kind of meld Ganyu teams with Kazuha are kind of questionable to begin with. To some extent, you have like, yeah, I guess there's Arlecchino now. To some extent, you have Hu Tao. But yeah, all in all, it kind of just, it's a signature weapon where a lot of the parts of the effects don't actually work on the signature character or their teams in a lot of situations. Like, technically, yeah, 20% attack and 16 plunge attack damage is useful on Kazuha because he's an attack scaler that does plunge attacks. But most of his damage is coming from reactions anyways. Same for the damage percent that it gives to begin with. Freedom Sworn is very often Kazuha's best in slot, but because of that lack of synergy, it is very often not very far ahead of the other options, sometimes even being behind the other options because of how good Fab and Sak are on him. If you get Freedom Sworn while you have Kazuha, you will likely find some use for it, but it is one of the least valuable signature weapons to get, in my opinion. there are very, very few situations where getting Freedom Sworn is better than spending your Primogems on something else. That being said, because Kazuha is such a versatile character, and because this weapon is often best in slot on him, even if not by that much, if you do lose your 50-50 to it, or your 37.5, 62.5, whatever, it's honestly not even that big of a deal, because a lot of people have Kazuha, so a lot of people will be able to at least put it to use. On top of that, I'm relatively sure that starting in 5.0, Epitomized Path is only 1 point. Yeah. The fate points are reduced to 1, which is a significant buff to weapon banners as a whole. You are now guaranteed to get the weapon you want on your second 32.56, whatever. If you lose the 32.5, 62.5, you're guaranteed to get it on the next one. Which was not the case before. Now, before you had to lose twice. Which is nice. It means that from 5.0 onwards, it will, on average, take a similar amount of wishes to get the character's signature weapon as it will to get their C1. Not just, I'm not just gonna say less, because while the pity is lower, you also are less likely to get the right weapon on the first one, because it's 37.5%, not 50%. Because you have a 75% chance to get a banner weapon and a 25% chance to get a standard weapon. And then 50% of that 75% is going to be the right weapon if you're not guaranteed because of your fate points. Yeah, effectively, it used to be that the weapon banner was on average more expensive than the character banner to get the right weapon. That's not necessarily the case anymore. And even average aside, it used to be that the guarantee was a lot more rough, and now it's a lot less. Which means, if you want to get the Milani weapon, you're at least not going to get R2 Freedom Sworn. So at least there's that. Speaking of which, let's talk about Milani's weapon. Low base attack, high crit damage, increase max HP, increase normal attack damage. If you trigger vape, or sorry, when you do a normal attack, you lose the normal attack buff, but if that normal attack is a vape, or if you trigger vape in general, you get it back. Basically, this effect is only really useful in Milani. It's an okay stat stick for Neuvillette, just because it's high or low base attack with 20% HP, but it's not great. On Milani herself, as I've talked about in the Milani pre-release, the increase from her free-to-play to her signature is relatively similar to other characters, but the alternatives between her free-to-play and her signature, there are not many of them. So if you're someone who already has a lot of 5-star weapons, going from those 5-star weapons to this is probably likely to be a bigger gap than for other characters getting their signature weapons. Milani is a character that in a decent amount of her teams is going to be the large majority of the team's DPS, which inherently means that signature weapon on her matters a bit more. all of that considered, and with the fact that they reduced the amount of fate points to 1, if you had to choose between Molani's C1 and her signature, I'm not entirely sure which one I would choose. Personally, I'd probably go for the C1, but I don't think they're that different. And then between C2 R0 and C1 R1, I'd probably go C1 R1. But I think it's reasonable to do C2 R0 as well. Yeah. Next up, we have the 4-star lineup. Stringless, 5-sword, Sacrificial Fragments, Dragon's Bane, and Favonius Greatsword. So, Dragon's Bane is a weapon that is good, but outside of Hu Tao and Raiden, doesn't really see play on anyone. And Raiden doesn't care about the refines. And more importantly, it's a weapon that's been on pretty much every fucking banner. And it's one of the 1.0 standard weapons, so you might have gotten some on the standard banner as well. Dragon's Bane is probably the weapon that the most people already have at R5 when it comes to banner weapons. And because of that, even though it's not a bad weapon, I'm never too happy to see it on a banner. Stringless is a pretty good weapon on official, although we're getting more and more good free-to-play alternatives with time, which means that Stringless is less of a useful weapon the more time goes on. But it's still fine. Sacrificial Fragments is still a weapon that I think is quite nice to have. Gives you better grouping with Sucrose, which is really comfortable in most Sucrose teams. Personally, I like it quite a bit. It's also useful on Naida, despite not being necessarily the best. Favonius Greatsword is fine. It suffers from not really having too many Greatsword or too many Claymore characters that want to use Fav. Like at the end of the day, Fav Greatsword and Fav Sword literally have the same stats. I'm pretty sure. Yeah. They both literally have the same stats and the same effect. But just because there's not a lot of Claymore characters that can make use of Fav very well, Fav Greatsword is kind of bad, and Fav Sword is one of the best 4-star weapons in the game, if not the best 4-star weapon in the game. It's like up there with Favonius Lance. But yeah, so Fav Greatsword, and Fav Sword is amazing. All in all, the 4-star lineup here is pretty average, I think. In terms of just quality, I think it's above average, but all of these are weapons that have been here since 1.0, so it's a lot more likely that you already have them or already have them at R5. And so because of that, despite it being probably higher quality than average for the 4-star lineup, I don't think it's necessarily better than average when it comes to pull value. Overall, the banner, I'd say, if you're looking for Freedom Sworn for Kazuha, not only is it not a great idea because it's Freedom Sworn, Surf's Up is also not a particularly versatile weapon, so I don't think you're too happy with it being the thing you lose your 50-50 to, unless you also go for Molani. On the other hand, if you are going for a surf sub because of Milani, I think Freedom Sworn is a fine option to have. It's not something you're too happy to see, but as long as you have Kazuha, you're pretty much guaranteed that you'll sometimes have a use for it, which isn't necessarily the case for a really strong weapon. That's like a carry weapon that you would only use on carry characters if you don't use those carry characters, right? Because the weapon is for Kazuha, who's one of the most versatile characters in the game, you're at least somewhat likely to have some use for it. So I'd say if you're hoping for Freedom Sworn, the banner is not very good. If you're hoping for Surf's Up, it's a slightly above average banner. I'd say you can be pretty satisfied with it. But yeah. So that is going to be it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed. Hope you learned a thing or two. Make sure you tune in for the initial testing from Milani and Kachina. And I will see you guys in the next one. Bye, YouTube. Let me let the editors know. Recorded banner review, higher priority than Kaniche pre-release. Okay, business. Oh. Best mobile game, POG. 1,000 Primo Gems. POG. What is this? Dude, what is going on? Oh, it's probably because I haven't done this. Well, I don't care. Anyways, that's going to be it for the day. I hope you guys enjoyed. As usual, thank you all for your participation in the yap session at the start of the stream. Just like I said last stream, I like being able to just yap about shit sometimes. So I appreciate your participation. We can... You know what? Let's raid Frost Prime. I haven't watched him as much in the past like few weeks because I've just been fucking watching way too much anime. But make sure you go say hi. He is currently playing Knock on the Coffin Lid, which I don't know what the hell that is, but that it looks to be some form of card game